Are you someone that is in recovery or pursuing a path of recovery, but you're interested in doing it in an unconventional way or a less conventional way? If so, stay with us. Today, I have an amazing friend and colleague on the channel, Jon Dean, who is an occupational therapist, a yoga instructor, is a Reiki practitioner that has trained under me and other teachers, as well as is a graduate of the QSM program. He was actually my first student in QSM. So I'm so glad to have you here, Jon. And I'm Derrick Ivey, a board certified clinical hypnotherapist, researcher, and intuitive. Welcome, Jon.
Yeah, hey Derek, I'm so excited to be here. And I just want to start by saying how much you have really inspired me on my path and watching your journey of recovery and the business that you've created, and really having a um, conscious business and way of um, interacting with life has really inspired and informed me on my way. So I'm excited for the talk today.
Yeah, thank you, Jon. And yeah, I feel like our soul paths crossed such an incredible way, and something that, is just beyond words, really. Like, just how our paths are so similar yet individual. Like, yeah, I always learn a lot from you also. So yeah, it's an honor to
Absolutely.
be on the path with you.
Absolutely. It's a mutual growth.
Yes. And so I wanted to start off today with just going into our personal recovery journeys and what help people to really get to know us and what brought us onto this path of recovery and what helped us see this as a way of life that was necessary or good for us. So I wonder, would you like to share with us first and kind of where you've been in addiction and how you found recovery and where you're at now?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty open about it these days. I've kind of found some peace with it and thankfully found the support where I feel comfortable being open because I know what it's like to be afraid of being judged by other people, whether it's friend groups or employers. And um, and I'm thankful to not be in that place anymore and to be able to share whatever experience, strength, and hope I can. Um, yeah, I started pretty early, and I believe that there is pretty much always some underlying pain. A lot of people who struggle with addiction have some sort of um, co-diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis, and so the substance use is a way of self-medicating. And I didn't even know it when I was young, but I have depression, and that's very much what I was doing was self-medicating for the depression as well as um, I'm very highly sensitive, and so being in certain situations was a challenge for me, and so substances helped me kind of numb out a bit, feel a little more comfortable. in social situations and highly stimulating situations, like parties, concerts, and things like that. And so it
Mm-hmm.
started when I was young, and it runs in my family. So my parents were pretty keen on it and picked up on it as it was developing, and had kind of had a zero tolerance for substance use because of their own history.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and so yeah, so I sort of split and launched into adulthood early and found a way to make it work. I might say I was a functional addict. It doesn't seem very functional looking back on it, but I did kind of keep
Right.
things moving in a certain way. I went to college and graduated college. And gradually over time, my addictions became less and less harmful, from hard drugs to alcohol and pot and cigarettes. Um, and I eventually just got to such a dark place after college, where I think a lot of addicts end up, which was using alone, um, and really just numbing out like all of my feelings and trying to get through the day. And and that's kind of when I decided to make a change and commit to try something new. And it was obvious at that point that substances were an issue for me, and so I went to AA because that's all I knew to do. That's what those who were in my family who had recovered had done, and um, I think that's where I met you, maybe, or maybe it was Heart of Recovery, kind of a branch off of AA. And I was sober for a year or so, and I don't know if it was because I was still pretty young, or I think there was something missing for me in AA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went off on my own kind of spiritual journey, and that led me to yoga, and then eventually to this path of Christian mysticism that I follow now. And and so I think that's kind of the heart of what I am excited to talk to you about is uh, how we both found this alternative uh, route to recovery that's a little more
Yeah.
esoteric, metaphysical, mystical. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear your story too, if you want to share.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Jon. And I totally I feel so many parallels in both of our stories. And then it's beautiful how life kind of leads us to different things that we can see some hope in, and we go a little kind of dip our toes in, and then it becomes another one of our paths. And yeah, I feel like we probably first met at a meditation meeting, that Heart of Recovery, which for those listening, it's like a meditation recovery meeting. Um, but yeah, I remember, so my story with addiction starts really back in like fifth or sixth grade, um, with soda. I remember at that very young age, I had no clue that I was doing things addictively, but I was just always such an intense person. And I remember even when I was younger, I would drink like six sodas a day because I liked them. They tasted good. They gave me a little zing of energy, and that kind of, looking back now, that would have been kind of an indicator of like my relationship with using substances, but I didn't actually get into real heavy duty addictions until I was in high school. And I grew up in an environment where it was very unstable, but it also, there was no alcohol or drugs. It was, I still had an upbringing that, I was expected to get good grades, be responsible. No one modeled addiction to me. But I remember when I was 16 years old, I worked at a fast food restaurant, and that's when I got exposed. The people I worked with there, they were always drinking or talking about drinking. And I noticed at my house that my dad and stepmom had alcohol in a cabinet, and it just got me ever so curious to try it. So I remember the first time I ever got drunk, I was 16, 15 or 16, one of the two. And I had gotten off work really late on a Friday night and everyone else was in bed. And I was like, well, I'm going to try it. And like I had had sips of it prior to that. But that night, I remember pouring Jim Beam into a yellow cup and filling the rest with Dr. Pepper. And I drank it as quick as I could. And I just remember the first wave of feeling that. And it was divine. Like I felt like this, I found God, and this is the answer to all of my problems. Like it completely changed my mood, completely changed my view of myself, the world. I remember laughing hysterically, looking at myself in the mirror. And then I did it as much as I could from there. I was like, I'm going to do this whenever possible. That started with doing it, the odd weekend here and there. Then I had people start buying it for me, hiding it, which really started that behavior of just being hiding things, not being open. And then by the time I was 19, got my first apartment, that's when I went into daily drinking. I started doing hard drugs, anything that made me feel good. I was all in, and at the expense of everything else in my life. Um, just, and it got really ugly really fast. And at age 20, I got my first DUI. I fell off a bus and hit my head. So I started experiencing consequences, but at that point, I wasn't ready to not drink because that was my escape from pain. Drugs and alcohol were my escape, and I didn't have skills to cope with my emotions or what I was feeling. So that started a chain of chronic relapse for probably at least 8 years. Like I was in and out of 12-step programs. I went to a rehab and I just could not get sober. Like I would put together some time, I would go back, wreck it all, hate myself, come back, build it back up, wreck it all. And that it was just this revolving door until 5 years ago, and now I have 5 years sober and just really rich
That's awesome.
recovery through all of my spiritual background and practices and routines that I do now. But up to that point, it was a revolving door.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think we were going through that kind of at the same time, that revolving door. And I think
Yeah.
I remember one of the last times um that you used, and we talked about it, and you just seemed so sure that it was not working. You were like, "Yeah, I did this. I
Hmm.
hung out with some friends last night, and I just feel so dead inside, so empty." And yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of things. Thank you so much for like your honesty and truth in your story. There's a lot of things it brings up, like the one of the hallmarks of addiction is continuing to use the substance even though it's bringing negative results into our life.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, yeah, I think that's the result of not having alternatives, right? It's giving us something, um, and we don't know how else to get that thing. Um,
Yeah.
and so we just keep going back to the substance. And so it's such a blessing now, I think, for both of us to have an arsenal, a toolkit that we can reach into and say, okay, like whenever
Yeah.
those thoughts come up, because I still get them. I'm like, oh, I could get high, I could get drunk. It's like I could do that, and I also have all these other things that I could do, you know, um,
Hmm.
to help calm myself, help bring a feeling of vitality, whatever it is that I'm feeling like I need. Um, there's other ways to to get that.
Right. And that's just something that is so relatable for me as well. Like that with addiction, that's our, it's kind of like that the substance is a symptom of something much,
Absolutely.
much deeper. And I think both of us have really figured out those deeper pieces in ourselves. And then that's what gives us the freedom to use these tools instead of going towards the destruction and the substances.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's kind of how our services, how our disciplines, you could say, connect and complement each other is you have really specialized in doing that deep work with people. Um, and I have been drawn more to the practical tools. And
Yeah.
both are definitely needed.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to what services do you offer to people? Like how would you help someone that is in that place that we used to be in, that they're in that revolving door and they just cannot get any traction?
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, first of all, I would just sit with them, because looking back on when I was in that experience and how many people, rightly so, are anxious about your situation and trying to kind of force solutions on you,
Yeah.
or trying to help you, but doing it in this really kind of panicky way. And so just sitting with someone and being like, I'm with you, like right here in the mess. Um,
Hmm.
that is the ground for sure. I think everyone who's struggling needs that. And from there, I I chose occupational therapy as my means of um, being of service because I like the practicality of it, and I began to see the value as I recovered more and more. I began to see the value in having a positive orientation for recovery and meaningful activities to do. Occupational therapy
Mm-hmm.
is really all about is identifying what meaningful what activities you find meaningful, and what the barriers and supports are to help you be successful in participating in those activities. And so maybe for some people it's their job and they're like, I really am passionate about my job, but the addiction is getting in the way.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's looking at, how to overcome the barriers that addiction presents to be able to do the job successfully. Or maybe it's a leisure activity, or maybe it's socializing with friends. And I know we're going
Mm-hmm.
to get more into the importance of relationships in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so that's the main kind of broad focus of what I do is like looking at what is important for you to do in life, and let's orient to that and
Yeah.
overcome the barriers that addiction creates so that you can get there. Because once you get there, then it's its own reinforcement for recovery. You have
Yeah.
something you have something that's worthwhile to not relapse for that keeps you going.
Mm-hmm.
But building towards that is often, the hardest part.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, OT is very much like mind body based, and so I lead people in mindfulness activities. It's a lot about being able to regulate your nervous system, being able to catch those thinking habits and triggers, um,
Yeah.
and as well as developing a lifestyle that is wholesome and healthy. And so, kind of creating habits and routines that support a healthy lifestyle is another thing that I specialize in. Yeah, I think that's what
That's
I'll say for now.
amazing.
And are you hearing this beeping in the background?
I don't.
There's a little
That's
beeping.
weird.
I'm gonna go turn it off real quick. But
Okay.
uh, but I'd love to hear as well more about your focus and how you help people through recovery as well who are going through that revolving door.
Yeah. So I love everything that you just said about what you do. And what really, really resonated with me was at the beginning when you were talking about um, what you said was that idea of just sitting with someone and not needing them to be any different, just being there with them as they are. And that's a huge part of my work as well, because when I was in my active addiction, I was feeling that pressure from everyone in my life, my parents, my even my extended family, because they had talked to them and said, he's going through this and we're worried about him. But in my work today, part of how I help people through addictions is radical acceptance of where they're at now. And because we can all only start from where we are. And I
Right.
truly feel like a lot of my addiction, I was picking up on all of these energies of worry that others around me were I was just feeling their worry for me, and that actually kind of perpetuated the drinking and the drugs because it's like I felt like I'm a horrible human making these people worry about me. So I might as well drink to not feel the pain of that, which I mean, that doesn't make logical sense. But to an addict, I think all addicts can kind of understand that how it's like
Oh
the
yeah,
thing that is the most destructive is your coping mechanism and how you
right.
deal with the pain of that. So the work that I do today is it is very, very deep. And I've learned through the years of doing this that some people are not at the place yet to go to those depths. So
Yeah,
a lot of what I do is working with people at their pace and helping them through not only the deep work, but all of those stages before they're ready to do the deep work and just helping them create safety in their energy field, helping them build resources within themselves and with spirit, and helping them build spiritual connections that they can access anytime, anywhere. Help them build resources within themselves that they have access to in those moments to help them use the time that they're thinking clearly to prepare for those times that they might not be thinking clearly or might be tempted to go down the path of satisfying the addiction rather than using the tools. So I use a lot of different energy healing modalities, spiritual hypnotherapy, both transpersonal and alchemal hypnotherapy. So I my work is more on the spiritual side of things, the deep depths of our human experience, and that was such a huge part of my recovery, that spiritual piece, that's what really set my heart open to do this, was that profound spiritual connection and experience that happened within me. And yeah, I think a lot of what inspired me to come into this work is the people that helped me out of that revolving door. And now it's like it's my turn to give that back and to be a support for others.
yeah, yeah. What you do is so powerful, Derrick. And I remember you told me that the archetype of the addict is the mystic, and I relate to that for sure. Like
Oh yeah.
when you were talking about your story and the first time you drank, and that feeling of like, oh my God, this is amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and we get hooked on altering our uh, state of being, you know, and the fact that it's
Mm-hmm.
so easy to do with substances. It's a chemical, and you just um, you know,
Yep.
ingest it, smoke it, whatever, and it's like instant. However, it comes with a huge cost in that it's not sustainable. You have
Right.
the come down, the withdrawals from all of that, and yeah, talking about the spiritual aspect, you know, addiction is a spiritual sickness, a mental
Mm-hmm.
sickness, a physical sickness.
Yeah, it
Wanting
totally
to
has
experience
all
more.
kind of
And
froze up there for a minute.
yeah, and just how we have found that through the spiritual practices that we have landed in. Like you said earlier, you kind of dip your toes early on, feel out different things, and at some point, I think it's necessary in recovery to dig into something and to stick with it and really stick with those deep um, practices to get to that internal transformation of the spirit. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And that has always stuck with me also. The archetype of the addict is the mystic, because yeah, looking back, that was always what I was seeking in it, was this spiritual experience of altering my consciousness. And like, I remember that excitement that would come with going out to the bars, and oh, I don't know who I'm gonna see out tonight. I don't know what's gonna happen, even though I knew nothing good ever happened when I was drinking. It was like that. It gave me the ability to be excited for the unknown, even
Mm-hmm.
if just in that moment. But what's really powerful about the spiritual practices that I have found is it gives you that quality of curiosity and eagerness for the unknown, but about life, because life has so many beautiful unknown things that could happen. And it's like these spiritual practices bring me back to my balanced place
Mm-hmm.
where I can open to those experiences, but be very grounded, but also very connected.
Right.
Whereas with the alcohol and drugs, it's an artificial experience. Yeah, you're gonna feel great for a few hours, but then you're gonna be worse off after the fact. You're gonna have a rebound effect. You're going to feel
Mm-hmm.
chemical differences. So it's like,
Yeah.
this is so much more sustainable and life-giving.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, I think there was that TED talk where he said the opposite of addiction is connection. And the the problem with the substance is that it gives you that chemical experience in the brain, but it's not connected to anything in reality.
Yeah.
Normally we have rushes of dopamine and serotonin through our experiences in life. This is what I love about occupational therapy too, is talking about how the experiences in life is the therapy and how that affects our brain. And
Hmm.
um, going on a walk, going on a run, the endorphins you get from that, doing something playful or competitive,
Yeah.
and the the natural chemicals that you get from that, completing a project, like those are things that give you that sense of well-being, the
Yeah.
rush of joy. And when you just take a substance to get it, it's disconnected from reality. And I love what you said, like um, it's like we're seeking a mystical life, but it's all up here. And that's part of why I named my company Roots for Recovery, is to
Yeah.
get those roots down so that we feel grounded and we can have that complete tree, um, that's rooted and
Yeah.
reaching, and have a sustainable spiritual way of living that is, fresh and uh, joyful and
Yeah,
always new.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is so true. Like the experiences in life, that's where the healing happens. Just like with my work, I take people on very deep soul journeys, and my sessions, they're about an hour and a half to 2 hours, which is unique compared to what a lot of people are used to, just having hour sessions. We go really deep and we go on these soul journeys, and a lot of
And
people,
time just kind of disappears. Honestly, I've done this with
oh
you
yeah,
and come back and it's like, how long was that? Like 20 minutes?
and it was like 2 hours, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that it's like, a lot of people think that's the healing, but that's where, and it's true, there's going to be a lot of perspective shifts. There's the opportunity to release a lot of stored bioenergetic patterns in the body, letting go of a lot of like muscle tension or however that physically manifests. That does happen during these sessions. There is cathartic releases that happen, but the real shifts are out in your everyday life when you're faced with the same situation, but you're able to handle that in a more skillful or resourceful way when you can call on those resources that you developed in the session to help you out in the real world. And I always
Yeah.
say one shift shifts everything because it changes how you view reality.
Hmm.
It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the more that you develop and grow spiritually, the more you're actually responsible for because
Yep.
you know better.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Responsibility and power go hand in hand. And this kind of segues into this relationship webinar that we have coming up. But I think
Yeah,
the most powerful modality that that has made the difference for me has been internal family systems and the relationship that I have with myself, which is what you were talking about, and all of the different parts of myself, and um, going deep and having those shifts, but also tracking it and staying with it and following
yeah.
through, which addicts, we're notoriously bad at. It's like being reliable. So we have to develop that skill in our relationships, starting with our relationship with ourselves. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this webinar that we're going to do. Um, I think
Me too.
relationships are one area that is can have like the biggest impact on recovery, but it's also seems to be one of the biggest obstacles. One of the things that addicts struggle with the most is healthy relationships.
Yep. And yeah, that goes for all types of relationships also. It's like not only your relationship with yourself, but also your relationship with others around you and family and romantic relationships and friendships. And yeah, that's
Yeah,
something that is so key to, definitely was on my journey. It was so key to finding lasting recovery was the connections that I made, like even our connection is very life-giving for my recovery because even if we didn't talk about anything recovery related, you're a living and breathing example of recovery and healing, and that gives me the inspiration to continue on my path with it. And so, yeah, when we came up, when we were brainstorming how to bring our work together, that was just something that both of us immediately were like, this is something that is going to really help people.
Right. Yeah, I saw your sacred seeds of recovery that you said was really just like channeled, from spirit, and um,
Totally.
pretty
Yeah.
much at the same time that I was building this roots of recovery business, um,
Yeah.
and then getting together and talking about, okay, what do you want to focus on? And of course, it's
Just
like here
so
we are
aligned.
talking like you and me, and it's about relationships. Um, so that's kind of the starting point. It
Yeah.
feels very right, definitely.
It's
Um,
so aligned. Like, yeah, at the exact same time, we were both separately working on things and guided to do things in this area. And then the way that everything has fallen into place and come through, it feels, I know that it's something so much bigger than us, guiding us and supporting us on this mission because it's really going to make a huge ripple effect on the planet to help more and more people feel that connection with themselves and others around them.
right. Yeah, what we had connected on was that piece of like reintegration um, of this uh, part of the human family, which since the beginning has been outcasted and condemned and shamed.
Yeah.
Um, and just in the last century, we've started to have more effective treatments for addiction, but they're still lacking for sure. And there are still, I believe, more people that don't recover than do. Um, when recovery is possible, and so it means so much to me, definitely, to work on this piece of reintegration and how to bridge that gap between people who are struggling with substances and the rest of the human family, because uh, people who struggle with addiction have a particular kind of outlook on life, a particular kind of personality. I think oftentimes they're very sensitive, intuitive people
Oh,
um,
yeah.
that have a lot of gifts for for humanity, and vice versa, that we
Absolutely.
can learn a lot, about say discipline and consistency and um, goals,
Hmm.
whatever it is that we're lacking, we can get that from other members of society. um, and so, yeah, relationships is like that place where we can come
Yeah.
together and start to work on how to have that back and forth, that give and take.
Oh, yeah. And absolutely, like, addicts are, in my experience, absolutely brilliant. Most addicts are all of their potential that they're not using. That's what gets drank and used as drugs. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know why it came out that way, but
Yeah.
like, when I was drinking, I could feel my potential looking back, but like I wasn't ready to step into that. So I would stay at a job I hated and get drunk every night. So I was drinking away all of the potential that now is my life's work. So
Hmm.
there's beautiful gifts that I've found just as a natural byproduct of being on this path and consistently showing up for myself
Hmm.
with practices, with routines have been really huge for me.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, I think looking back on like all the friends that I've had who have struggled with addiction, yeah, they were brilliant. And it's a lot of the time it's like the impatience, like we see how things could be better, and we just wish it were better already. And
yeah,
um, having the patience and discipline and willingness to put in the time, to make those changes. And yeah, it's powerful.
yeah. So our relationships and recovery webinar is going to be something that we're doing every month.
Right.
And our first meeting is on October 9th, and you're invited. You're welcome to join us. And Jon, how do people get signed up to make sure that they're a part of this?
Yeah, well, you can reach out to either one of us if you have our number or on social media, and we're gonna funnel everyone to me, and then I'll be sending out the link. And just a little quick summary of what we're gonna do. We're gonna give a little introduction, a little education around what we do in our treatment for recovery and how relationships ties into it. We're going to talk about one of the models of relationship, um, forming relationships and the barriers to relationships. And oh, and I forgot, we're going to start with that guided practice that you're going to guide us through. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the end, we'll have discussion and really open it up for people to share and workshop some common relationship issue that most of us face. Um, so yeah, you can reach out to either one of us, and then I'll send that link if you're interested. And I don't know if you mentioned, but it is free, so
Yeah,
that's a perk.
yeah. It's absolutely freely offered. And the other thing I want to say to everyone is just that you're welcome to join us exactly as you are in this moment or in that moment. You don't need to commit to anything. You don't need to change your whole life right now. If you're just curious about what a life in recovery would look like, you're still more than welcome to be a part of this. If you have any questions, reach out to Jon or I. And just we're here for you. And this is for you.
Yeah. And yeah, this is really just kind of like a doorway in. Is I think how we're envisioning this is just a way to connect and get more information. So we'd
Mhm.
love to have you join.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else, Jon, that you would like to share before we close?
I don't think so, man. I really appreciate your time. I'm super excited for what is evolving and unfolding between us, and looking forward
Same.
to the path
And I'm
ahead.
excited. I can feel all of the souls that are en route to us right now to join us. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's
I'm
so
so
needed.
excited and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
And everyone, don't forget to like the video. Let us know in the comments what if did this bring anything up for you? How do you relate to this? And share this video with anyone in your life that you think might benefit, that
Yeah.
they may also be, they are also invited to our webinars. So we'll see everyone soon. Have a great day.